And they continued to kind of beat us up on price and beat us up on price and beat us up on price. And you go down and down. You're about to get some room to negotiate, but they just kept going and kept going and kept going. And finally, the thing it was upside down, right? It was in the red.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Account Management, a tactical guide to success. You have Fred Fuller here, and I'm joined on my right hand with my good friend, the Hooded Falcon and Cadbury egg connoisseur, John Brown.
I'm joined by the lover of Pop-Tarts, frosted only, unfrosted, you're a monster, Fred Fuller.
Blueberry. We can go blueberry. We can go all in here.
Let's pick some new items for this discussion.
Okay. All right. How was your weekend?
It was great. I went and saw, I won't say who it is. You ever seen a musical act, like a popular musical act, and they were popular like, a while back. They had a bunch of hit songs, and you go see them and they don't play the hits. Have you ever been in that situation and you're like mad as heck because you paid a lot of money for the concert, and then you're like, I really feel like you ought to play the hits, don't you think? Am I wrong? I don't know.
I can answer that question when you tell me who it is.
I don't want to say because I don't want to trash them.
Well, give me one of their songs.
Let's move on.
No.
No.
All right. Give me a beat? I'll name that song in 2 beats. No, we're not. Okay, no problem.
I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to complain. But it all leads back to account management because, I'm the client. I'm there paying. I feel like they should kind of give me what I want. No, too much of a stretch.
Way too much. Way too much. Now, but I saw too. I too saw music this last.
Oh, you did?
weekend.
Yeah. Well, what was it?
Fiddler on the Roof.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there some good fiddling?
Well, yeah, there was some phenomenal fiddling now, to be honest with
Wow,
you.
that sounds amazing.
But yeah, no, it was incredible, man. It was the Alliance Theater. They put it together with the Atlanta Symphony, and it was absolutely phenomenal. It was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. The theater, man. Support theater.
Yeah. That's important. And support the arts.
It's
right.
Soft skills. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right. What are we going to talk about today, John?
Brad, I'm pretty excited about this because it's a very, very important topic for account managers. We're going to talk about negotiations. We are going to talk about, we're going to do this actually in 2 parts. It's a 2-part episode. Pretty exciting. So we are going to, in the first part, talk about kind of the different types of negotiations. In other words, kind of what you need to understand about negotiations, and then how to prepare for them. In this episode, we're also going to talk about kind of some really good books we can recommend you read that can make you a really great negotiator. So some self-learning tools, if you will. So that's today's episode. And then the next time we get together, we're going to talk about the process of negotiation, like literally sort of how to negotiate. So that'll be the exciting part. We'll be in the second part. And then a little bit about common mistakes that happen in negotiation. So we're doing a real sort of deep dive on this very important topic.
But look, isn't it simple? Like, aren't negotiations...
Buy low, sell high?
Yeah, buy low, sell high, right? Like, draw the line. This is what I'm going to do, my way or the highway. Like, right? No.
Episode over. Good. Good talk.
But, I mean, we don't need to do 2 full episodes unless they're going to be really short.
I think there's actually a lot to cover.
There is a tremendous amount to cover. So I've taken negotiation training as well.
You and I both have taken a ton of training. Like even the best of the best still have something to learn. Like it's one of those evergreen sort of things.
And that was the thing that stood out most to me was when I took the training was the number of people that came in and we started with an exercise of negotiation where each side kind of had a script and something they had to accomplish, right? And the number of people that came in and just did here it is, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And you're like,
which is rookie.
It's not real world, right? Like, okay, if you're the only supplier, you get away with that for a very brief period of time because I'm going to go find somebody else that can do this for me. Like you can't, that's just not the business. It's not going to work, right?
Right. I took a negotiation class when I was in business school. It was probably the most popular class in the business school for a darn good reason. One, it was It's really interesting. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of human psychology here. It brings together a ton of different things in business, all in one discipline. But what was fascinating about the class, so it's super fun. That's the other part that made it like a great class, why people want to do it. But what I found really interesting is the professor had us negotiate against a partner at the beginning of the class and then the same person at the end. And the person I did it with in the beginning, I did a pretty good job against them. So when they scored afterwards, like it was sort of all these dimensions and then you kind of score afterwards I did pretty well on the first one. By that second, like after this other person had gone through all the training at the end, not as strong. I got beat, right? Like, and but the point of that, I mean, this is just over a semester, right? So like, this is one of those things that like, for a lot of people who gravitate to account management, maybe they're not in sales for a reason, and this stuff can seem scary. But it really is just a little bit of practice, and you can get a lot better really quickly.
Well, I always have to be careful with this next statement because if taken out of context, like, but there's a sport to this.
Yes.
Right. And so appreciate it for what it is. It too is in and of itself an experience and an ecosystem, right? Like there's a way to do it and a way to go about it. And if you let it intimidate you, you won't get as much out of it as you can.
Yeah, that's great.
And I don't mean get as much out of it like win for your company or for you. I mean the process, the experience, the education, right? Like lean into it and embrace it because it really is a great skill to have. It's phenomenal. You can never go wrong with it, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about this when we do the kind of process discussion in the second half, but you're making a great point, which is like, there's a temptation to look at negotiations as like a competition necessarily. And a lot of times in business, and we'll talk about why in a second, it's really not. And it actually can be kind of fun. And it's a little bit of maybe not a competition, more like a game. If that makes sense, like just not as competitive, right?
Yeah.
Before we get into it though, I have a housekeeping item.
Yeah, oh, let's hear this.
Are you ready?
I think.
So you and I are very excited to announce that we are going to start subscriptions for part of our podcast for some extra bonus episodes. Will actually be subscription episodes, so you can pay for extra content. Yes, we are down there in the mud trying to get the filthy lucre, like the capitalists that we are. We admit that.
Wait, I don't even know what those words are. I know mud, but that was about it. Lucre and Lex Luger and I don't know, kryptonite. What happened? What happened?
What about the word capitalist? Were you good with that?
I think
that one?
I mostly know what that means.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. No, I think we're growing up as a podcast, and we're going to do exciting things. We may do ads one day. I don't know. When I listen to podcasts, I'm like, how many mattresses do they think I need?
Yeah.
Every ad's for a mattress. I don't understand, but we may go there one day. That kind of thing. How many mattresses do you buy a year?
It depends.
You have no idea what
leap year? You talking about a leap year?
Leap year. Okay. You have no idea what I'm talking about. All right. Anyway, so that's the announcement. We're going to start doing subscription episodes, so you can find those on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well.
It's really exciting. Getting out there and we've received really positive feedback on the content that we've put out there. People have asked us, "Are you getting back to it?" Here we are, and I think trying to create a little bit more of a community around some of this, and so getting people to kind of sign up and get more insight into what you're after, what you're looking for, what might be helpful, those kind of things. So be on the lookout, and we're really excited. We want your feedback.
There you go. All right, let's talk about negotiations.
Okay, let's talk about them. So here we're going to talk about, let's start with types. So we have negotiations. People think, I do, like there's one negotiation and that is a thing, right? It's a coin toss over something and that's that. But there's more there. There's more depth, yeah?
Your analogy is exactly right on the point of... No, not that.
Right. Exactly.
The coin toss. And that's how most people tend to think of it. It's like I win and you lose. And so there are two types of negotiations. And what you're talking about is the first kind, which are called distributive negotiations. And this is what everybody thinks a negotiation is. And it's the classic mistake most people start with is it's generally negotiations that are generally single issue negotiations or something close to that, and one party wins at the expense of the other. In other words, there's a fixed pie.
Right.
That is and so, buying a house a little bit or a car is a little bit of a distributive negotiation. Car probably being a little bit better example. You actually can get to the other type of negotiation, integrative negotiations, a little bit more often on a house because there's kind of more there. But distributive negotiation essentially means, hey, I win, you lose. And a lot of times it's about price, and also distributed negotiation where you don't have to interact with the other party afterwards.
Transactional.
Very transactional.
Yep.
Right.
Short-term, transactional.
Right.
This for that.
That's right.
Like that's a distributive negotiation.
I'm buying this thing, and then after that, I don't have to talk to you anymore.
So we see these in our personal lives, right? Our social lives, but we also see them then in our business lives. And depending on what you do for a living, these negotiations may predominantly fall into the distributive bucket, depending, right?
Depending.
But the other type of negotiations
are integrative negotiations, which almost by definition, like if you're an account manager and you are managing clients, other B2B clients, almost by definition, almost every negotiation you're doing is this second type, the integrative negotiation, which essentially is multiple issue negotiations where an agreement that is better for all parties is possible. Most negotiations are actually of that variety, and in particular in B2B, for what we do, what we're talking about here on this podcast ad nauseum, that is the main type of negotiation. And so just realizing that is super important, because if you don't get that very subtle point, you'll go into the negotiation all wrong. And actually, this is what I've seen. The real danger is a lot of even senior executives only know of the first type, and they kind of do all their negotiations that way, and it harms them.
It's the concept of winning that you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
like I have to get the better deal here, and oftentimes I don't want to speak for others, but it feels like it lacks sort of long-term vision. Right. So if you get so caught up on that thing, especially in a distributive negotiation, right? That's
usually price,
kind of binary. That's right. You're going to have an outcome. But then how does the integrative negotiation follow suit, or how does it support that narrative, right? Because these two things they can have a relationship. They can be a series of dominoes, right?
Yeah. They can be like a distributive negotiation with integrative negotiation. But, in an integrative negotiation, you can enlarge the pie. So the point with that being, you can think of extra dimensions to negotiate on to make the pie bigger, and think about like, well, what if we weren't talking about this particular item, but what if I bring it into the negotiation as a potential trade-off for something else that you need, right? And so an integrative is more creative thinking about things that you could bring in that maybe are unexpected. If you're in distributive negotiation mode and you're thinking to yourself, it's winning and losing, you'll only negotiate on the things that are right in front of you. And you might win or you might lose, but like you actually fail to enlarge the pie and get something bigger for everybody involved.
So is it safe to say that how you prepare for the negotiation can actually have some bearing on which type of model you're actually engaging in?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, you should prepare. First of all, the reason we're spending so much time talking about this is you need to know which one you're doing before you go prepare, right? And so part of the preparation is sort of realizing that. But but 90% of the time, for most all of what we do, what we talk about in this show, and the people that are listening to it, it's all integrated negotiation. So just go into that. But the reason we're dwelling on it so much is you will be surrounded by people who only know the other kind. You have to watch out for them, because they will steer you to the wrong place.
Yeah, they will always have a voice.
Yeah.
Oftentimes in negotiations, and this is probably a really good point, don't let outside influences contaminate your thinking about things, right? Because it's like the Monday morning quarterback, right? Well, you never make a bad call if you're the Monday morning quarterback.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and we can see it. We talked a little bit about that in the last episode. So when you talk about preparation, then, so you have a feel for which negotiation you're engaged in, and then you begin to prepare. Walk me through that. What do you think about with preparation?
So there's 6 things that that you need to do. The first is set goals. So we're going to talk about that. The second is consider the framework agreement. The third is consider your ZOPA.
Yeah.
Yes. That sounds like a new dance, but it's not.
It could be, man. Like,
better. Wait, no, but, and then the next one is, the next is to develop your BATNA. That's an even more modern version of the ZOPA.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hip movement.
It is alphabet soup, is what it is. And now you're trying to bring the you're trying to bring the discotheque into it. And now only thing I can think about right now is roller skating. So I don't know what you've done to me, but are we still talking about negotiations?
Did you go to the roller rink when you were a kid?
You darn right I did.
Did they have the soda machine and you would order a suicide and it was where you get all the different flavors all together and that was like a big deal?
A nachos, a cotton candy, a couple skate, and then a bellyache for like 3 hours. It was perfect.
A couple skate. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
I'm a big couple skater.
I shared my cotton candy to get the couple skate.
Did you really?
Yeah. You
know when they came out with those new Coca-Cola machines, the freestyle where you can put all the drinks together? Yeah. I saw one of those for the first time. I said to my wife, "Oh, that's a suicide."
Yeah.
She knew exactly what I was talking about. Same age.
So how do you prepare for a negotiation, John?
Well, I thought we were just doing tangents today. So develop your BATNA. The next one is determine what kinds and how much leverage each party possesses. So leverage is really important. We're going to talk about what leverage is. And then finally, understand all the players and how to incorporate them into your conversation. So anyway, we'll start with setting goals.
Okay.
We'll start with that. That word is specifically chosen. We were saying, so when you start a negotiation, you want to obviously, in terms of your mental preparation, write down what are the things that you need to get out of the negotiation. What do you need to get done? And we're actually very specifically saying it is goals, not a bottom line.
Yep.
So there's all kinds of research on this. If you say, pick a dimension you might be negotiating on, let's say it's SLAs. I don't know. I'm making this up. It's kind of a technology company example. We can only live with an SLA of 7 days. Can't be any more than 7 days. Studies show, if you start out on one side of that spectrum, you will wind up negotiating closer to that number versus a number that would have been better for you if you had said, but my goal is actually 3 days, right? And frame it that way instead of what your bottom line is necessarily, if that makes sense. So
this is disciplines and considerations around anchoring. Is that
We're going to talk about anchoring in the next episode where we talk about the process. But yeah, that's exactly right. So that you're reading again. You're reading ahead. It's not allowed.
Cheating on the test.
Cheating on the test. No. So right. The reason you do that is because you want to anchor the negotiation. We're going to talk a lot about how you don't split the difference. And how you get to that is you actually prepare what your goals are out of the negotiation.
Yeah.
And my quote about this is always, repeatedly, Eisenhower is probably one of these apocryphal stories. But he once said, plans are useless, but planning is priceless.
So don't get married to the outcome.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about deal fever in the next episode. Which I
can't wait for the next episode.
sweating.
We're talking
already.
About stuff. Yeah.
But that's the start, is setting goals.
Yeah. So you go into it. You have a foundation for kind of the objectives, right? And then you start considering. You have consider the framework agreement and consider ZOPA, right? And so ZOPA is zone of possible agreement.
That's right.
So this is the area that's kind of got the sweet spot in it, right?
Yeah. These two are really similar concepts, right? So think about. If you had, let's try to make this geometric, right? So like, let's say you were negotiating on 2 dimensions, right? That's a square. I know you don't like it when I talk about science.
Oh my God, prototrons.
But think about a square, right? So the zone of possible agreement is like what, on these 2 dimensions, like what could you live with, what's in that square, which is not dissimilar than thinking about goals. But thinking about the framework agreement and ZOPA essentially means, hey, what are the outlines of what are the ways I'm going to frame this negotiation to start? Like, let's say you have 1,000 dimensions in the contract that you could negotiate on. I've got to actually consider, like, what am I going to start with to frame the discussion, right?
Yep.
And set the agenda. And again, this goes back to, you just said it a minute ago, anchoring, right? Like, so you need to anchor the negotiation more towards your end on each dimension. So let's say, one of the dimensions in the contract is how often we're going to perform training a year.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure.
So, like, ideally for my company, I only want to give the training twice a year. But I think the client may be wanting something like, 12 times a year, right? So you have to sort of frame out, you want to frame out what does framing would be not so much that preparation aspect that I said before, where it's like, okay, I'm at 2, I think I'll set my goal at 3, I know they want 12. Framing is more where you would just set the term, think about how you would set the terms for what constitutes training, right?
Right.
Is that 1 day on site a year? Is it by video, for 3 hours in one day? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, framing is more like just putting shape around what is even the thing that we're talking about, right?
Yes. That's a great example, because in that scenario, what you can have is somebody thinking that, well, if we do it 12 times, it's once a month, it'll keep it fresh, everybody will stay on top of it. But if the quality isn't there, right? If the engagement isn't there, so everybody will check a box once a month versus having everybody sit down every other month in a room together, whatever those parameters are. But what is the objective you're trying to achieve, and what's the best way to achieve that? And more is not always better.
Exactly. So like, you just said you just did a couple things there. So you brought in the concept of quality, which is like, again, you did a non-distributive thing there. You brought in a new dimension to the discussion and said, what about quality? Okay, well, I'm going to use that to frame the agreement. I'm going to say, training really only counts as training is if it's high quality, which we will measure for you, Mr. Client, with a feedback survey at the end of every session, and we will provide you those results. So now we're going to negotiate around doing three trainings a year, but they will all be of 5 quality, right? Like, so this is framing.
Now the measurement mechanism is now in play.
Right. Yeah. You just threw a new thing in there.
Yeah. That's it's fun. That's where it's fun.
I feel like you and I could start negotiating right now about this.
You want to negotiate over dinner?
Over the check?
2 hot dogs. I'm going to the QT for a quick taquito or whatever those things are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll play credit card roulette at the end of it. And,
see who has the most indigestion. No offense. Listen, plenty of great hot dogs out there.
So consider the framework agreement and define the ZOPA, the
that's right.
Agreement. Yeah.
That's right. And then logically, you would start talking about your BATNA or have considerations around your BATNA, which is your best alternative to
negotiated agreement.
Boom. Look at that.
Exactly right.
Look at that.
So this is a term that's super common in negotiations. You need to know what it is. Some people start throwing out, what's our BATNA? Like, it's actually a reasonably common business term. So you need to know what that is. And developing that as part of the negotiation preparation is really important. So best alternative to negotiation agreement is a couple things. One, what is our alternative if we don't get this agreement done?
Yep.
And I will tell you, I have a story about this. I've witnessed people not really think about this too hard. And then when they go into a negotiation and then they get to the end and they are stuck because they can't progress the negotiation forward for whatever reason, and they don't really have an alternative, and because they've not really thought it through, right? And if you don't spend time thinking about this, particularly if it's a really important negotiation, like you could be in real trouble. So the story I'll tell is like, I was at a smaller company and was negotiating a partnership agreement with like a really large company, and my boss sent me up to the big company to go negotiate this thing, and this was a really large company with a ton of compliance issues. And I'll never forget sitting at a table. It was me and the lawyer from the company I was at. And across the table from us, I am not kidding, were 5 lawyers from this company. Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because you have taken yourself back to that moment.
Yeah.
You're talking with your eyes closed and there's seething going on. And maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe.
No, I'm just like, I'm just aghast at this whole thing, just even reliving the moment and talking about it. Yeah, so we're across from 5 lawyers, and they start jamming every kind of legalese and compliance thing you can ever think of into this contract. And the lawyer and I came back. We both were like, I think we even made a joke out of it. Like, do you guys want to go get some more lawyers? Like, 5 doesn't seem like enough. If you got 5, maybe you got 10 more you should bring in here. And it was nothing but lawyers. That was the other problem. Like, usually most negotiations between 2 business people, right? Yeah. Anyway, so we come back and my lawyer and I both pitched to our boss. We're like, hey, we actually think we just should walk away from this. Like, our best alternative to this, we actually don't think this works, because it's so rigid. It won't let us have the flexibility to actually accomplish the mission of what we want to do here. And so, and our boss just basically told us no and had us sign the agreement. It was a really, really bad agreement. It didn't really go anywhere or work out in any kind of way, because I think nobody really sat down to consider, like, what's our alternative to this? And is our alternative that bad? In my mind, the reason the lawyer and I were saying, hey, our best alternative negotiated agreement is to do nothing, is because the deal was that bad. But I don't think anybody had that conception that could even be possible.
Right.
Right. And so nobody was prepared to accept it. And so, but if you sat down and thought about it for 20 minutes and said, what would be the terms under which we would say, let's just not even do this? You'd be mentally prepared for it a little bit more, and you might be willing to go, oh, okay. And if you really start to think it all the way through, a lot of times those alternatives are not that bad.
Enjoying the podcast but want to learn more best practices for account management? Pick up a copy of A Dragon Walks Into a Meeting, a tactical guide to client management. Available at Amazon or wherever books are sold.
So this is really an interesting sort of concept, if you will. Mm-hmm. I worked for a company that was negotiating to provide technology for a very, very large restaurant chain, global restaurant chain. And I was with a smaller company.
Was it Chili's?
I think you're eating good in the neighborhood.
I'm a big Chili's official.
No, it's I don't know what that is. Yeah. It was a bit massive restaurant chain, and they continued to kind of beat us up on price and beat us up on price and beat us up on price. And you go down and down, and you're about to get some room to negotiate, but they just kept going and kept going and kept going. And finally the thing it was upside down, right? It was in the red.
Yeah.
And so there was a big meeting, and the conversation was, look, we really want to work with you guys. This is bad business. And it's such big business that it will turn our entire organization.
Will actually harm us.
So I this is not coming from some inflammatory
we're not going to negotiating with you.
Like we fundamentally can't take it. And if you can get this pricing, you should go elsewhere and get it. And everybody in the room, right? The other side was just jaws hit the floor and what's going on, and you can't do this. And we said, no, guys, this is not posturing. We fundamentally can't lose money on this much money, right?
Yeah. And if you hadn't prepared your BATNA, like it sounds like your team did some analysis.
That's right.
Like they actually knew what the numbers were. That is preparing the BATNA, right? Is part of the prep. Like where
do we draw that line? Where do we draw that line? And they called us the next day and said, hey, we didn't realize this is where we were, where you guys were. So what do we need to get to reasonable business?
Yeah.
And we told them, and we were honest, and they were like, let's do this.
Yeah.
Right?
Large organizations sometimes don't appreciate that they can be such aggressive negotiators. They can actually, I've seen large organizations actually drive smaller organizations out of business because of this stuff.
Now,
let
me give you the counter. I'll give you the counter to that experience. Okay, yeah. The counter to that experience was I was with an organization and we were smaller and negotiating again with a top 5 organization in their industry, and they wanted favorable pricing, the best pricing guarantee in the contract, and we'd already done that elsewhere. And so instead of entertaining it and trying to figure out a way to cleverly address it, I just kind of looked at this individual and said, "Well, you're not going to get that." This was a very, very large organization they were not amused in the least.
Did you say with a smile?
With my presentation.
Did you look amazing?
I might have, because it was kind of getting near the end of my run there at this place. But I just had this moment of like, hey, well, you're not going to get that. And I was super kind of casual, but just kind of like, can we just like, I don't think
that's one of my recommendations.
It is. Well, so let me, when you get to the end of the story, you might change your mind.
Oh, okay. All right. What you got?
So I said, you're not going to get that. And he asked for it again. And I said, this is not going to happen. You should stop. And he stood up, slammed his hand on the desk, stood over me, yelled as loud as he could right in my face and said, "This is not how you negotiate with Acme Incorporated." And I was gobsmacked. I was no longer on that negotiation. Kind of a weird thing.
What?
But in all seriousness, like that's also the reason that I'm here talking about this, because I've been through some of this. I've gotten the calluses and the wounds and the scar tissue, right? Like I've made the mistakes, and thankfully I was able to go make those mistakes. But but there was a very clever solution to the problem, and I wasn't thinking about it, right? And so, like when it comes to negotiations, sometimes what feels good could be totally wrong, right? And there's this element of truth and not being deceitful and lying, but like it's, if somebody you love comes down the stairs wearing something and you're like, hey, is that really what you're going to wear? But you don't necessarily look at them and go, you look like crap, go change it, right? You're going to hit that a little bit different. And these negotiations are no different. Like when you come at it and hit somebody right between the eyes.
I would pay $1,000 to watch you when your wife comes down the stairs and you say, are you really going to wear that? I would really enjoy that.
So here's your mistake. Yeah. I said when someone you love comes down the stairs, and I have 3 boys. So like they come down in
that's different.
Tuxedo and flip-flops. I'm like, you can't do that.
No, that's different.
Right?
I thought you meant your spouse, your lovely spouse.
No, my lovely.
No, you're smarter than that.
You're smart. Stick a hot dagger in my eye.
Yeah, deservedly so.
Yeah, because I'm so fashionable.
Yeah, that is true. Okay. Well, one final note on BATNA, again, after another digression into whatever, is, and actually you kind of just did this when you tell that story, is there's 2 subpoints to this. One is consider revealing your BATNA to whoever you're negotiating against, right? Because we're all account managers, we're talking about account managers, I tend to say it's a client. But in the role I'm in now, certainly in my last role, a lot of times I'm actually on the other side of the table. Actually, more often than not now, that's where I am. And so, I see both sides of this. But then actually, I say consider doing it. It shouldn't necessarily do it because sometimes it can go really, really well. Sometimes it can go sort of well. Your story was kind of a mix of went well in one way and that you got them to sort of internalize, but it kind of got you off of that client. Maybe that's not so good. But I've actually been on calls with clients where, they were yelling at me. Maybe we're in the implementation process of some sort, and they're giving me a hard time. And I will just say, hey, I know, if you're senior enough, you can make this judgment to say, hey, it's actually not worth it to me to harm our relationship to keep moving forward, right? So like if you're this mad, maybe we're not right for you.
Yeah, that's right.
And reveal your BATNA that way. And I've had a lot of clients kind of pretty quick back off after that, So if you sort of expose that, if you do it in the right way, it can be constructive, but you can do it in the wrong way and mess things up. But but revealing your BATNA of like, hey, here's what I can live with early, like that can be fruitful.
Well, maybe. You should be exploring your BATNA.
Yeah.
Right. And exploring your BATNA, then, like people, it's hard not to talk about what your alternatives might be in a negotiation. Now, you don't throw it in their face.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it like, there's a lot of ways you wouldn't do it. You say, well, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to go to your competitor. Like that's not going to work. It has to be like a fairly credible BATNA, right?
Right, so, right. Yeah, so not a threat. Yeah.
The other piece on that is take some time to consider the other side's BATNA.
I would say it is the most grossly misunderstood part of negotiations for new negotiators.
Yeah, they never do this.
Once you understand that, it changes everything.
Yes.
Everything. And so I'll go back to the example that I gave where the gentleman stood over me and kind of, gave me the where to's and what for's. Mm-hmm. It dawned on me that the problem that this individual had was less about winning or losing or getting his way and more about he is part of a massive organization and he can't go back to his boss and say, I couldn't get what I wanted from Small Fry Inc. Right? And that's the challenge.
Exactly the problem.
And so if I would have taken that differently and said, look, I believe I understand what you're up against. And let me tell you a little bit about what I'm up against and how do we work together to kind of solve this problem? It would have been a different experience.
What else can I do for you? Can we just brainstorm a little bit? Are there some other things I can put in here that help you with, you see, if you spent that time and said, okay, this person's BATNA is probably, they can't go back with this in hand. But they go back with something else, right?
Yeah.
Something powerful that's not this, right? And thinking through that is pretty important. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you think about your strategy, and maybe we get into this in the next episode, but think about all the roles and the players and who's on the field and how you can leverage them into the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many considerations around that. When you're talking about a large account, large relationship, then you're talking about relationships that are red, amber, green status up and down the kind of food chain. And there's a lot of different conversations to be had that can help support your efforts, right?
Yeah.
And so don't underestimate that or overlook it. And I will say in the example that I gave where I took the position of you're not going to get that, there was an element of design to it. So when I got taken off of it, it wasn't, how could you be so stupid? It was, we kind of played a card and needed to try to set a different sort of expectation around it. Right?
I'll give you an example of this. This one is a little story. I one time negotiated a ginormous contract with a party that was threatening to it was a giant customer who was threatening to leave, and they were mad at us for a bunch of reasons. And
we'll gloss over that part.
Let's not that's its own really long story. But our contract with this company is a humongous contract, not just in terms of dollars and all, but literally the physical contract itself was a binder this thick.
Yeah.
And for those in radio land, I'm gesturing like about a 3-inch kind of binder. And so just the contract itself was huge. And so one of the things that I knew would enable us to win was the reason the client was so mad is that strategically they were unaligned with us, because really the work that we were doing for them is work that they wanted to be doing for themselves, right? Which happens actually reasonably often in technology. You see these big kind of giants in the industry like Apple and Google and whatever, and they fight it out. They actually have this fight on a lot of different kind of dimensions where they encroach in each other's spaces. And so strategically we're unaligned, but the epiphany I had it was that how we were going to win this is operationally we were so much stronger because we knew how to do the work, right? We had a giant customer care team, we had the technology, we had built a network, we had all these sort of things, right? And so I knew we were going to win. So when the client opens up a negotiation with us, okay, well, maybe we'll stay with you if you start negotiating on price, which, by the way, turned out to not be true, but that's not important right now. We'll talk about truth telling in the next episode about when it's important to tell the truth. But anyway, but one of the things that I really insisted on when they opened the negotiation was we actually have the operate. So this is again framing the conversation. I really tried to push for and got them to start the operational part of the negotiation in the early stages. So we actually had a big room full of people all working on this negotiation in kind of two teams. And I was kind of seated with a bunch of their operations people. And I did that on purpose because I wanted that to weigh in on the whole thing from them forward, because I knew that was our strength and what we were good at, right? Like,
So that's your framework.
yeah. So it's like, right. But it speaks to this point about understanding who are all the players and how to bring them into the conversation. Actually, I'll never forget, so there were a lot of things I was willing to give up operationally because we were already so strong there. And I'll never forget, like, the person who, their main operations leader was sitting to my right. And every time I would, they would kind of ask for something and I would give on that. She would give, there was a big bowl with like candy on the table. She would give me like a piece of candy. Right. And I had a little, I had some candy after, afterwards. And again, just sort of that visual of, look, I'm here and I'm negotiating. Right. And so it just kind of set up the whole frame of, okay, these guys are really sincere and they really are trying to help us. And so it made it a lot better later when we got to things like pricing and some stuff that I really cared about. Like I could kind of hold the line there a lot better, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was a word salad, but of your point of make sure the right people are there at the right time. Yeah.
You cannot underestimate the importance of that. Like everybody's got a role to play. The executives do, right? The account managers do. The technical
and the level doesn't matter. Right.
Oh, yeah.
No. I mean, like, the executives are a lot beholden to what their tech team or their operations team tells them is like, hey, here's how it's going to go.
And you can have engineers working with their engineers that have great rapport, that talk about their kids and complain about their bosses. Like, not that I like, please don't do that. If you work for me, I don't want you complaining.
No, I don't. Right.
But that's just bad practice regardless. But they will confide in you. They will say things and you can get a lot of intel that way. Right. Now, again, like that's not to, you got to consider trust and your moral compass.
Well,
right.
I have another story about that same negotiation I was telling you about, like, again, that speaks to your point. Because at those operational levels, we had such great relationships, one-on-one, kind of peer-to-peer. Again, this is a giant organization. We were a reasonably large organization also. We had this kind of peer-to-peer. Our informational advantage was substantial. Right. So we would get told things like kind of, and again, if you work for me and you do this, you will get fired.
Hard.
But in this case, like the client was telling us kind of through these one-on-one relationships, like all kinds of things that we probably shouldn't know.
Yeah.
Right. And personal things about people, like just all sorts of crazy stuff. And and so we were just hugely informationally advantaged in this negotiation because we have those amazing relationships, which, again, what are we here for? We're here for account management, amazing relationships, right? So,
well, that supersedes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, that's there's one more thing we talk about, which is leverage.
Yes.
Let's talk about leverage. Here's the question. Are leverage and power the same thing?
Do you want me to answer that? Because I cheated and read ahead.
You've been cheating a lot during this episode.
The whole thing is nothing.
Cheat festival. You keep cheating.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it's a big cheating festival.
Answer the question.
No.
No.
They are not the same thing.
Leverage and power.
Leverage and power are very different.
What's the definition of leverage?
I don't. I don't like this. No. I think the definition of leverage is being able to influence an outcome because of a strategic position.
Yeah. Yes. My definition is when somebody wants something from someone else. Right? If you want something from someone else, they have leverage.
Unless you have something on them that makes that a no-brainer for them, and then you have the leverage.
We were talking about it before the beginning of the show. You run your family like a mob boss.
I don't.
People are money.
I made the comment earlier about my wife, and if I told her what to wear, I said she would something about daggers, and that's not true at all.
Oh, okay.
She's a wonderful, loving person, and I would not in a million years give her any fashion input.
Good. Smart man.
I want to clarify that.
Okay. I'm glad we came back to that. All right. Yeah. Let's talk about leverage.
Okay. Yeah. You run it like a mafia.
Leverage is I think it's when somebody wants something from someone else. So like if I want something from you, you have leverage over me.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's, well, the point is.
This is so silly because I just watched a show where this actually played out. Somebody wanted something from somebody, did not have, the other person then has the leverage. Then that other person has a secret, and this is TV, right? But the other person has a secret that gets discovered. Now that person calls that person back and says, oh, you remember the thing I asked for? You're going to give it to me because I know your secret. Right. And the person on the other end now has no leverage. The other person has all the leverage, right? So to me, that's why.
What the other person now wants is don't tell the secret.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The leverage just moved.
The leverage has moved. That's right.
Yeah. And so I think it's that simple. But going back to that crazy negotiation I was talking about, the point with this is leverage and power are not the same thing, and a lot of people get those two things confused. And so power is how much power you have maybe as an organization. And so the example I was given before about, my company negotiating with a big, ginormous corporation, they had all the power. They had a brand name that is a consumer brand name that you would know if I said it. And they had all the power in the relationship. And interestingly, the reason I'm talking about this negotiation is the only time I've ever seen this. They had all of the power in the relationship and no leverage.
Right.
So because what they wanted were a laundry list of things from us as a company, and we didn't want anything other than to just keep the business. Right. And they wanted X, Y,
not immaterial business.
Well, no. Right. And so they had that leverage over us, but the sort of list of things that they wanted were just enormous. And so, it's rare that you get in a situation with such a powerful actor where they don't have a lot of leverage. That's a really unusual situation. It was so unusual for them, none of them understood it.
Right.
They just didn't. They couldn't even conceptualize.
Yeah, that's not how you negotiate with Acme Incorporated.
Yeah, right? It's just like your example with Acme. Yeah, like they.
What?
Right.
Yeah.
So, so anyway, this is mostly to talk about if you're a big giant corporation and you think because you're a big giant corporation, you're an inexperienced negotiator and you think that you're going to just get somebody to do what you want, you're going to wind up being surprised sometimes.
And I feel like the tides are shifting because of technology, the swift nature of technology, how quick and easy it is to spin up a company of almost any kind.
Right.
Right. So the resting on that, we have this competitive moat. Like moats disappear.
Yeah.
Right. So be careful. People build bridges and fill them in with sand and all kinds of fun stuff. So be really, really careful with that. So that's the other thing of leverage and power. They both have an equal amount of opportunity and risk.
Yeah. Well,
right?
In technology, both can easily transfer to the other party very, very quickly.
Yes.
In technology, shockingly quickly. So you have to kind of think about that. So all that is the setup for our next episode. So we went through preparation. We went through setting goals, considering the framework agreement and your ZOPA.
Yeah.
Develop your BATNA. Think about their BATNA. Determine what kinds of leverage each party possesses. And understand who all the players are and incorporate them in the conversation. You know who has a lot of leverage in life? A crying child in the grocery store. Have you ever been in that situation?
No. I've tried not to go to grocery stores.
You don't go in the grocery store?
No.
Well, but the parents out there will know what I'm talking about. You could take your child in the grocery store and they start pitching when they're small.
Yeah.
Not when they're 20. Hopefully not. I don't know. When they start pitching a fit in the grocery store because they want some item on the shelf that you really don't want to give them. Who has all the leverage in that?
Oh, yeah. No, the kid, right?
What do you want? What do you want? You want the
squalling to go away.
Stop.
Yeah.
But you have all the power because you're the grown-up, right? Power and leverage.
Yeah. Well, that's a great example.
Isn't that a good example?
What a misconception those without children have over how that works.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's great. So, look, we're going to do another episode and continue this conversation around negotiations. In the meantime, just if somebody wants to lay the foundation, they want to start looking at some materials. What are some of the books that you have found useful? What's some of the materials that you would point people towards?
So, I would say as an account manager, we actually in our book did not spend a ton of time on negotiations just because it's such a well-covered area, right? Like we were trying to kind of talk about everything that was not, kind of well-covered, like sales and negotiations. They're pretty well-covered. So anyway, the good news is there is an ocean of material written about this topic. Yeah. And what we recommend above all else is to get your company, and a lot of companies will do this, even small ones, get your company to send you to a training, day long, if you can get it. If you can get a week long, get that. Like get a right. You've done these things before,
I've done them. And listen, the beauty of this training and this discipline around negotiations, it's so much bigger than negotiations. Like everybody goes, oh, a negotiation, there's millions on the table or whatever that is, right? And there's some, and to your point, winners and losers and all this other, like it really changes the way you think about interacting with people.
Yeah,
because you start to understand the concept of like throwaway items. What are the things that are in here that I really don't care? Like I'll sacrifice them, and I know there's one in here that they really care about, right? And so I'm going to make sure that I kind of leverage that accordingly. And so if you start thinking about how you interact with other people and the things you get caught up in, and sometimes like, why do you care about that? Like, you know what I mean? So it kind of helps govern your thinking a little bit more broadly. That's what I took away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a million things. And what they'll do is if you go to a class, they'll make you practice.
Yeah.
And like, that's where the real value of the whole thing is.
Well, it's my good friend, Mike Tyson. Right?
Well,
everybody's got a plan.
Until you get punched in the face.
Well, until you're in it, like not right. This is negotiations. We're not boxing and getting punches in the face. You don't. Not on Mondays.
Right.
Right. But until you're in the thing, I mean, you don't know X's and O's on a board, right? All that stuff, right? Until you're really going through it, and you get that emotional charge where somebody has this adverse response to something you say, and they jump, they kind of jump on you and like, okay, how do I handle that moment, right? Whether it's in negotiation or anywhere else. So anyway, it's just it's good stuff. It's powerful stuff, and you should definitely take a negotiations class because it will open your mind.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Let's give just a few books that we would recommend. Let's say your company won't send you to training too cheap, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, maybe.
But look, in order, here are some books you can read that will really help you start to think about this topic. The number one is kind of the number one recommended book, and kind of everybody reads this, is called Getting to Yes.
Yeah, great book.
Very famous, written by a couple of Harvard folks, Fisher and Urey. That everybody in business should read that book. That's kind of just a total classic. Like you should just, it's a must. It's a must. Yeah, you should read that book. The next two are ones that I personally like. They're a little bit more academic, but that's kind of why I like them, is it gives you a lot of kind of the underlying theory. And we're going to talk about some of these things in the next episode. But one is called Bargaining for Advantage by Richard Schell. He's a Wharton professor. Negotiating Rationally by Bazerman and Niali. That's a really good book. Again, those two are a little bit more academic, but lots of great examples, both really fascinating books. The next one is a book that actually is pretty famous right now. There's an article about him in the New York Times a few weeks ago by Chris Voss, and it's called Never Split the Difference. I like that book on negotiation. I find it, it's the problem is, though, most of his experiences, he's a hostage negotiator for the FBI, which is kind of cool to read about. But as you can imagine, a hostage negotiation is a bit of a distributive negotiation. Like you either win that one or you don't. But he's got great techniques in there in terms of like how to kind of just talk to other people and little things you can do using silence, using reflection. There's a lot of like little technique things in there that are really, really good, but just be careful. It's not a business negotiation is that integrative, like multivariate negotiation, so
multivariate negotiation.
And then the final book is called. It's not.
Why didn't you respond to that?
I don't know what to say. What do you mean?
Oh man, that's one of Michael Voss's things.
Is it?
It's so. We don't endorse anybody. We don't get money from anybody.
I don't know.
I've taken a lot of flights, and they have the master class. things that you can watch
uh-huh.
on the fly. And Voss has some for negotiations.
Oh, he does? Yeah.
If you find yourself in front of this, like, do it. They're like 15, 20-minute episodes. They're super cool. And one of his big things is when somebody says something in a negotiation.
It's called reflecting.
And you go, and you just repeat the last three words, pause, and do a slight head tilt. And 99 times out of 100, the person on the other side of that will go, whoa, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to ask.
He calls that reflecting. Yeah.
It's so,
no, it's super powerful. Yeah.
And do it. Like, this is the fun part about this is you can go do this to people in the living room and they will be like, eventually they'll be like, knock it off. But
what I think it is you can't get one over on me. It's not possible.
Not possible.
No, you're supposed to go. Not possible.
Yeah, well, I tried. I was trying to. I thought there might be a chance I could slip that. All right,
there's one more book to mention, which is not really a negotiation book, but it's like an underlayment that you should just read. It's called "Influence" by Robert Cialdini, and I actually talk about technique, like little techniques like that, what we were just talking about. That this book has a million of those little things, and I highly recommend if you are in some kind of project management role or implementations, it's really, really useful for kind of getting particularly clients to do things that you need them to do.
It's crazy.
That they kind of don't want to do because it's like work. Yeah. So actually my last company had our implementation team read that book and they loved it. They literally wrote up a procedure on how to use it, in their real life work. Yeah.
Okay. That's one I'm not familiar. So, okay.
Yeah. Influence is it's not quite a negotiation book, but it's kind of in that zone. So anyway,
cool.
Part 1 of negotiations.
Part 1 of negotiations in the books: Pop-Tarts, Cadbury eggs, Falcon hoods. What else did we talk about?
Falcon hoods?
Yeah, you're the hooded Falcon, man. We talked about that at the beginning.
I just did.
Yeah, yeah, you did, and I didn't even. Okay, all right. Let's wrap this. That's enough. That's enough. Thank you for tuning in. For John Brown, I'm Fred Fuller, and we'll see you next time.
Learn more about the art and science of account management. Pick up A Dragon Walks Into a Meeting, a tactical guide to client management. Digital and print editions available at Amazon or your favorite bookseller. Fred and John would like to hear from you. Leave a comment for us on YouTube and head over to fuller-brown.com for more great content.